Welcome to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast with your host, Brandon Seigel. I'm a published author, speaker, entrepreneur, and private practice strategist dedicated to transforming the way that healthcare functions. This podcast is all about empowering you to create the change you want to see. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Seigel. Today we are talking about exit planning, building a practice worth buying. And all of us are looking at that. And so today there's no better guest to bring on than Sean Healy with Accounted4. Sean, welcome back to the pod. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Brandon. Doing well.
Good. So I'm sure you get this all the time is like valuations. How do I build a private practice that is going to be worth something? Everyone one day wants to exit their practice in some capacity, but what makes a practice worth 2 times versus 5 times? And how early should owners start kind of that planning process?
So I'm going to start with that second question first. All right.
Okay.
It is always extremely important to start planning 3 to 5 years ahead of time. All right. A lot of times they're going to ask for at least 3 years worth of information. So just to be able to put the appropriate plans in place and to get organized appropriately, the sooner you start, the better. All right. When it comes to increasing the value, so the value is based off of a few different items. For private practices, usually you're looking at whatever your adjusted EBITDA is, which if you don't know what that is, completely understandable. Most people don't. You want to find your adjusted EBITDA number. And what they do is they multiply it by a multiplier. All right. That multiplier can be based off of a number of different items. But the biggest ones that we tend to find to be able to increase that multiplier is how much revenue you're bringing in. This is not what you are billing. This is what you are collecting. All right. So how much EBITDA you have from a collection standpoint. How much revenue you have from a collection standpoint. What your EBITDA percentage is or your profit margin is. All right. Those are very, very important numbers. The more profit you have, the better. How many locations you have. How many providers you have. Generally, what they're looking for is they don't want risk. And if you have a lot of locations, or if you have a lot of providers, if one provider was to leave or one location was to fail, you're a low risk that the company would actually go south and be hard to recover from. So a lot of times, the larger of an organization you are and the more stable you are as a company, the better the multiplier you're gonna end up getting.
Mm-hmm. And I'll bring up the point that I think many of us don't recognize that there's a lot of factors that come into who our buyer is. So if I were to sell my business to Sean, no offense, Sean, it would look different than if I were to sell my company to a big private equity backed company, what they're looking for, et cetera. And so a lot of the time when we're looking at like, how do I get that 5-time multiplier? So when we say 5-time multiplier, in this circumstance, we're saying 5 times the EBITDA. So if I've got a $1 million EBITDA, not gross revenue, EBITDA, earnings before tax, depreciation, asset, the whole bit, basically our net after add backs and all. What we're saying is $5 million is what that company would sell for at a 5-time multiplier. And so what I want you to think with is that typically they're looking for, hey, when I buy Brandon's company, I want to know that I'm paying basically for 5 years worth of net earning is what they're saying. So I want to know that I can expand faster than that. Their viewpoint is like, hey, Brandon, you've got 10 locations, you have the systems, you have everything in place. So in the next, 5 years, I can actually triple the size of your company to make back this investment. They're not looking at it from the standpoint of like, hey, we're going to pay 5 times your multiplier to just sit and do the same thing for the next 5 years. They're trying to buy your growth trajectory. And I'm bringing this up because there's a lot of really, really, really scammy, terrible business brokers out there, and they give you the wrong advice. And then there's also a lot of really terrible private equity companies that give you the wrong advice. What I want you to know is that this market's always changing, and it's kind of like a house. You're only worth what someone's willing to buy. But in most cases, your best financial opportunity is being able to get to a point where your private practice works for you, because it's rare that you're ever going to get this like sales price that's going to change your life forever. Like, and what I want to say is, like, I've been asked, and Sean, I don't know if you play this game of like, how much would it take for you to sell? And my wife asked me, she said, if someone right now offered you $10 million for your company, would you just sign on the dotted line? And I said, no. And she was surprised. And my point is, like, it depends on your age. It depends on your goals. It depends on what you're going to do. It depends on that non-compete. But I know one of our companies got offered around 7, 8 years ago. We got about, I think it was an 8-time multiplier. And back in the day, an 8-time multiplier was incredible. My point to you all is, in 8 years, we doubled what the value of that was. So we actually benefited more by not selling. And so when you're looking at this idea of how do I increase the value of my company, recognize that it is showing trajectory, not ceiling. If you've reached your ceiling, you're not as valuable as if you delivered a trajectory. And typically what I've found, and Sean, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but there's different tiers of EBITDA. So your multiplier, when you're at $1 million EBITDA, that's a big number. So 750 to 550 EBITDA, the multiplier doesn't change that much. But when I hit $1 million EBITDA, it's a whole nother multiplier level than under $1 million. And then typically 2.5 million EBITDA is the next big tier. So why I say that is, you come to me and you say, Brandon, why am I getting the same multiplier at 750 as I am at 550 EBITDA? The reality is that multiplier difference is not going to be that big. I'm just curious from your.
And those numbers are a sliding scale to a degree. They do change over time, and the multipliers change over the course of time as well. I think the big thing that we always recommend is, you always want to start with the end in mind. To your point, you need to know what you need to retire. If you're going to go and sell your biggest asset, the thing that you spent years and years building, it should be able to provide you enough money that you can retire. Everybody has a different number for retirement. If you don't know what that number is, how do you know what you need to sell your company for? Because maybe you're already at that point. Maybe you need to grow by another 500,000 to get to that next tier, to Brandon's point. Maybe you need to open up 2 more locations because you need to spread the risk out. You're just not the appropriate appetite for private equity. Or maybe you have a team of employees that want to buy you out, and you don't have to do anything different outside of just maintain for a little while. Everybody has a different end goal. I always recommend make sure you start with that end goal to figure out what your company needs to look like to be able to get you to that retirement goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason for sale is also important. So some of you want to sell because you're just done with this business model. Okay. Some of you actually, like, the most successful entrepreneurs I've seen, once they make an exit, it's a matter of time till they get back in and they make another exit. And so you start to see, like, is the game of entrepreneurship your game, or is this just a practice that you love and you're ready to get out? And knowing that, I think, is really, really crucial. What I will tell you
wrong with either, by the way.
There's nothing wrong with either. What I want to say is, sometimes we sell premature, and sometimes we don't recognize that $1 million does not go as far as we think it will. So it's like, and what I also want to, because I've looked on the buying side and the selling side. The biggest mistake I see, Sean, is that practice owners value their practice emotionally, and they do not recognize that when you're selling, you're buying assets, essentially. The asset could be insurance contracts. The asset is your therapists, your employees, your practitioners, your staff. It could be something that you do that's different than everyone else. It could be all different things, but we're buying assets and we're buying growth. And so a practice that is shrinking year over year is not as valuable in multiplier as one that's growing. So knowing that you're selling on an upward trajectory is really important. And one of the mistakes that I often see is people wait until everything crashes. It's like, oh my God, we're going to sell because it's COVID. I'm like, well, I'm going to get a really good deal during COVID, you know, knowing that you're selling at the top versus selling at the downshift is really important. So don't sell when you've had 2 years of downturn. Get it back up and then make that exit.
Yeah, sell if you're running towards, sell because you're running towards something, not away from something.
Yeah. Yeah. And often what I hear when I ask buyers who are like, hey, Brandon, will you look at this? They're like, I've taken it as far as I can take it. And that's good. Okay. So if someone were to come in and take it to another gear, what do you foresee for it? Where's that upside? Where's that? Give me your vision for the person that's going to take it to the next gear. You know, what financial records do buyers actually look at most with sellers, and kind of what that looks like negotiation wise? What do you find when you're dealing with I'm sure you get practice owners like, hey, here, help me with this on either side. What are the financial records that you think make the biggest impact?
So we've gone through due diligence countless times at this point. There's a couple that I think pop up that I think most people don't realize or they're not ready for. So a lot of times during due diligence, you get a laundry list of different documents. Every buyer wants a different list, but the main ones tend to be the same, especially on the financial side. Some of the ones that they look at with a little bit of scrutiny is your reconciliation reports and your bank statements. So what that basically means is at the end of each month, you should be reconciling your bookkeeping system to a bank statement, meaning every single line item on that bank statement should match up with every single line item in your bookkeeping system. Most people do not do this, and most people do not do this correctly. Your reconciliation is meant to be a double check to make sure that you have good data integrity. At least that's what we refer to it as. If those reports don't match, that means there's a lot of discrepancies in your financial statements. So if I take a look at somebody's financials, that's the first thing that we usually review, because if I can't trust your P&L, then I'm not just going to take your word that you have an EBITDA of X dollars. So I'd say make sure that those are correct first before going in, because if they can't trust your financials, they're going to find ways to pay you less because you are now more risky. All right. So that would be one of them. Number two is having your EBITDA add backs organized ahead of time. So an EBITDA add back, and I know we brought this up earlier, think about it this way. If somebody was to buy my company, what are the things that they are not buying? So if I have 2 children on payroll, which I'm allowed to do as a business owner, they're not going to keep paying my children that wage if they were to buy my company tomorrow. So if I had a one-time big legal bill for one reason or another, or I had certain research and development that I put a lot of money and time into, or I wrote off a vacation that also had a conference or something along those lines, which we see a lot of people tend to do, a buyer's not going to be buying those same expenses. So if you ahead of time say, hey, these are the different things that we spent money on that we ran through the business, which we were allowed to run through the business, but you as the buyer would not be purchasing. If you can outline them ahead of time, that's how you figure out this is my EBITDA number plus all the things that a buyer would not be looking to purchase, right? There's certain, the more specific you can be around those items and the more organized you are proactively, the higher of an EBITDA you show, which to me is like your sticker price. If I'm going to go buy a car, the negotiation starts at the sticker price. So if we start with our normal EBITDA and then come back through the process and be like, well, my wife is on payroll, my kid is on payroll, there was this one expense 2 years ago. What happens is they're going to start saying no to a lot of them. Whereas if you come in organized and you start with that top number, it has an immediate effect on the negotiation and the conversation. Outside of that, you're looking at 3 years of financial statements, which is pretty standard. A lot of times there's a lot of other numbers information from your EMR that they're going to be requesting as well. They want to know your internal analytics and metrics because, to Brandon's point, they want to see if there's upside in those metrics. So there's a lot of information from your bookkeeping system and EMR that would be requested. The first two I mentioned are the two that I think most people are just not aware of going in.
I totally agree. And I think the other thing I'll say is we'll look at what I'm gonna say. I don't know if loan is the right word, but what income that you have received as a result from things like COVID and stuff like that. And so sometimes there's different uh, government assists that skew your numbers, and we want to take that out of the equation. I have walked away from deals because the revenue was not real revenue. And so you just want to be careful of that. And so I'm surprised by how I've now gone under contract a couple times where within 30 days of analysis, I know we have to, usually within 30 days, I know or don't know based on looking at your data. And it really does come down to how you set your valuation up and making sure that your valuation, although I agree, Sean, it needs to be the top, it has to be justified. So I just went through a process that the person has not shown more than $100,000 EBITDA since they started the company 8 years ago. And they're trying to get a valuation as a $250,000 EBITDA because Medicaid gave an increase based on forecast, like projections. You can't project, I might give a better multiplier off of that. So my point is your valuation has to be based on real historic data. Your multiplier may be based on projections or forecasts. Would you agree, Sean?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you said 30 days that you've found that you have problems. I've had clients that have wanted to buy companies in the past, which within 30 seconds of looking at the financials, I told them not to do it. You know, there's a lot of times people will make adjustments to the financial statements after the fact. It is very, very easy to identify that. And I've seen numbers that you can tell they downloaded everything from the bookkeeping system. They made the adjustments after the fact. Then they sent the information over. You want to make sure that you're managing your data correctly and proactively. That way, you know, once again, it shouldn't take 30 seconds to figure out that something's wrong. You know not to move forward if that's the case. Like that shows risk. I'm not going to pay a lot of money if you are showing a lot of risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more, I almost say it in this way, when you buy a home, you get an inspection. If you can do an inspection of your numbers from like a third party or whatnot prior to going under contract, you're going to help that contract actually get delivered. Don't think your numbers are good. Have someone really look at it and assess your numbers, whether it's Sean or someone else that actually says, no, you've got all the data you need for a buyer to move forward with this. There's no camouflage here. This is authentic numbers, real data.
And at certain sizes, you're required to do that. Companies that are larger, you have to do, they refer to as a quality of earnings. It is expensive to do. But if you're about to go and sell for multi-million dollar deals, the buyer's going to want to know that you've done your due diligence well ahead of time. So sometimes it is actually a requirement. Other times, yeah, as long as you have somebody look at it proactively and give you good criticism and feedback on things you might want to change, you want to make sure your information is organized in a way that a buyer will understand what's happening, because otherwise you just look risky and disorganized.
Absolutely. How do you value the owner's personal involvement in patient care when pricing a practice? Like, do you have any feedback on that when you see, how does that affect the valuation from your perspective?
So if you're an owner and you are practicing and you are trying to sell your company, even if you are exiting, we talked about EBITDA add backs to make your EBITDA bigger. Usually we like to use the owner's salary as an EBITDA add back. If you are practicing, they will need to replace you, meaning we can't write off your entire salary. As a buyer, what you would want to see as a buyer is a business that can stand on its own 2 feet without the owner. If everything is reliant on the owner, if all the knowledge is in the owner's head, if all the standard operating procedures are specifically what the owner says, if the owner doesn't want to stay in the company, their company is not worth a lot. So one of the goals as a business owner or as the CEO or the president or whatever title you have, your goal is to build your company so it can stand on its own 2 feet without you. My one client, I think, referred to it best. He calls it like the hit by a bus. He goes, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want to make sure that my business can keep running regardless of what happens to me. And businesses that can and do have that type of structure or have a senior leadership team or have good standard operating procedures, once again, they come off much less risky, which allows you to be able to sell your company for more.
100%. Especially most buyers are going to want the owner to stay longer if they know that they're contributing to day in a high capacity. So I had helped a client sell their practice. And what we did is we actually had her take a 1-year sabbatical. And we were able to show that the practice had already a clinical director in place. And other than a monthly board meeting, she just did that. And so she actually, when she exited, she was hired on a 12-month consultation of just a monthly meeting like she did for the year prior. And she got her whole value and all earnouts as a result of it.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yep. So imagine if you took a sabbatical from your practice. What would that look like? How would you deliver that?
Yeah. And if you're not sure, start with a vacation.
Yeah.
Like a good 2-week one. You'd be amazed how your team steps up and you shine a light and you can see where some of the cracks are and you can take the time to start filling in those cracks because they will come to light eventually, whether you're hiding from them right now or not. The more you can step away and act as a visionary or more as a leader, the better it has on evaluation.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you, Sean, for being part of this episode. Why don't you tell everyone how to get in touch with you? It will be in our show notes, but I want you to hear it as well. What's the easiest way for us to reach Accounted For?
So you can either find me on LinkedIn, Sean, S-E-A-N, the Irish way, Healy, H-E-A-L-Y. You can always shoot me an email at Accounted4, LLC.com, or go to our website, Accounted4LLC.com.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, Sean. He has been a huge partner in helping the private practices we serve really optimize the way that their bookkeeping is done. Their CFOs are coaching people every day, and it's really helped really improve the bottom line of every practice we worked with. So I appreciate the work you do. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, follow us on YouTube and LinkedIn, and together we can thrive, not just survive. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast. I'm incredibly grateful to each and every one of you. Exciting news. We're now available everywhere, from Spotify to Apple Podcasts to YouTube or anywhere you like to listen to your podcasts. So watch, listen, and reach out. If you love this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It truly means the world to me. Are you looking for more ways to elevate your practice? If so, now is your chance. Reach out, go to my website, or email me at brandon@wellnessworksmp.com. And remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.